Yeah, there are a lot of conversation here about, the meaning of belonging and belongingness. I want to share a comment from the chat. Uh, McAllister Bell says, I wonder how institutions can characterize belongingness in such a way that doesn't actually encourage more polarization. At institutions where most of the students and faculty have very similar political commitments, how does the appeal to belongingness encourage, or rather, does the appeal to belongingness encourage groupthink? I think we're hearing several people suggest that could be a slippery slope, but there's ways to frame it differently. I also just wanted to mention that there might be a connection here to some of the larger messages that universities and colleges engage in. So to that point, if you have a college that doesn't really have a strong policy about institutional neutrality on contested questions in society, then it's not hard to read between the lines to understand, well, when we say we stand for something as the university, who's included in that we and who isn't? And so I think belonging can take some interesting directions. Even colleges that have pioneering programs in dialogue can also at the same time have very public facing commitments to different sorts of values or a moral framework that they're really introducing to students at orientation. Adam, I don't exactly want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious if you've seen this come up at Denison, because I know that they've done a lot of great work with the debates, but I visited the homepage. There's a commitment to anti-racism and all kinds of things that HxA members might want to debate the specifics about. Is there a way that sort of questioning orthodoxy coexists with a sense of, these are our priorities as a community that are important to us, and you should know that when you come here?
Yeah, no, it's a hard question, and I think a tension that institutions and presidents increasingly face with the pressure, really peer pressure, in higher ed, especially in recent years, for university presidents to make a statement on issue after issue after issue. And I mean, my own personal view is that this has gone way too far, and that there are pitfalls and dangers in presidents making taking institutional stances on things that don't directly relate to the university's mission. I mean, it's never ending. It's a slippery slope. At what point, what does a president not have to weigh in on in terms of international challenges, domestic, and so on and so forth? And unless it's something that take the recent U.S. Supreme Court affirmative action decision, obviously that directly relates to universities, their mission, their admissions. Even there, I think it's perilous terrain, because the last thing you want to do as a president is call attention to your university. If you're going to say we're going to defy the law, look out. That's not smart strategy. But I think you can talk about values, fundamental values that your university is going to that will not change, or something like that. But I do think that the issue of this whole issue of peer pressure to take stances is tricky, especially if you're at the same time wanting to say we're a campus open to the open inquiry and exchange of ideas and so forth, neutrality, in a sense. And so that's an argument for not being very selective about what you take stances on. And I think, who's going to I don't think a lot of people are going to argue that, be against anti-racism, but then what is anti-racism and what does that include? And so Yeah, no, I think this is a tricky issue. I feel fortunate that our president has been quite brave. I really think in on the forefront of saying, we have we're part of the Chicago principles on academic freedom, and we really want to make sure that our classrooms and our campus in general is a place for open inquiry.
Thank you. And I will also quickly plug Adam and his college president were interviewed. I think someone shared the link in the chat on a podcast called Higher Ed Now, where they really talk through a lot of examples of the debates, what was behind them, some of the educational motivations, helping students sharpen their thinking and so forth. So that is also worth a listen. I want to share another comment from our Q&A box. Maybe it's a sign of our trustful age. We have a lot of anonymous people making comments. Maybe I should stop saying names on the stream, but anonymous attendee says, I'm curious if in orientation debates, students are assigned to argue for certain positions. I think at my institution, just giving students space to argue for a controversial view would result in silence. There are very strong norms surrounding not offending anyone, and this makes debates in the classroom very difficult in my experience. So I wonder what specifically we could do to combat this, end quote. I certainly know that there are classroom techniques that involve, arguing for sort of predetermined positions or arguing for the position you don't hold. Any of our panelists want to weigh in on that one?
I'll mention something. Sorry. One thing that I think is important to do is remind everyone, including new students, that not all college classes are debates about something. You think of a whole variety of courses that would not involve students sharing their opinion about anything, and it wouldn't be the professor's opinion either, for that matter. And so I think when we do have something we might consider a discussion or deliberate something in class, I would like to frame it as really giving students the opportunity to apply the methods of the field of the class they're in. It's not about just saying their own personal opinion or political viewpoint. And even if they're engaged in some sort of big debate, it would presumably be about learning how to debate, learning the methods of debate, and not because the importance of being in a college class is to say what your opinion is necessarily. So I think that is a little bit of a strange expectation that some students have that I think we could do better with reframing and talking about what is the purpose of being in a college classroom. And there will be lively discussions, we would hope, in a college class, but not necessarily for to share opinions that then people have to be afraid they're going to offend other people with, but really just giving them a chance to apply the methods of the field. And I think that lowers the temperature from the start, so that students can feel more comfortable engaging in that kind of deliberation and discussion, even when there's disagreement and different points of view.
I agree. I'm just going to say, I noticed somebody mentioned in the chat box role playing, which also can be a great way to lower the temperature and depersonalize this and make it about ideas and arguments and not the person and their own personal opinion. One thing that I do, this is just because my own field is medieval history, but I like to share with students examples historically from universities going back to the 1200s, 1300s, in the Middle Ages, how central disputations and debates were to university life, and that in many examples of students and professors having to take multiple sides and argue for something and argue against something. This was the standard way to approach all all problems for hundreds of years. You have Thomas Aquinas arguing that ambition is a sin, and then arguing, no, actually ambition is not a sin, and all the counter arguments on both sides. And for them to sort of practice doing this, I think there are just such valuable skills of having to develop the best arguments you can. And it's not always just a for and against. There's a lot of in betweens, all spectrum. But I think I agree with Martha that it's not applicable in every discipline or for every course. But I do think that it's healthy to give students the experience and exposure that this has been a norm, an educational norm for a very, very long time.
Thank you so much.
And I'll actually
last word. Go ahead, Joseph.
add too. So, like, real quick. So, like, another avenue, you could take. I support the, having someone argue for something, they don't necessarily agree with. Another avenue is potentially, break students up into two groups or pairs, or however, and pose a group of topics and focus on similarities and differences. Have them go through the process of trying to discover with that other person what they agree on and what they don't.
Absolutely. I've shared a couple more resources in the chat. I'll encourage anyone else to do the same. And again, I'm very serious. If you're aware of great tools, syllabi, programs, we would love to drive some eyeballs to them and feature them. So please feel free to find us at heterodoxacademy.org and share those so we can help these sorts of efforts get more traction. I want to thank the panelists that have joined us today. And before we go, give them an opportunity to tell us where to find them and follow them on the internet or in real life. Adam, where can we find your work?
I'm afraid I'm a pretty inactive Twitter user. I haven't looked at it in a long time. But there is the podcast interview that was mentioned earlier on Higher Ed Now from last year.
Thank you. We're too busy enlightening young minds to bother on the internet, and that's a good thing. Joseph, is there somewhere or some piece of work that you'd like us to share with the audience?
Yeah, so I mean, social media wise, you can follow me on Twitter at Joseph Guar, and I've also written quite a few pieces for Heterodox Academy. So, if you're interested in more of the student affairs end of, all this, I would, encourage people to check those out.
And finally, Martha, what's some of your work that you'd like to plug?
I did write two really short pieces, one on keeping the first year experience academic, or at least keeping an academic component to it, and the importance of common reading programs as intellectual introductions to the university, if you can manage to stay out of the culture wars. So I'll post those into the chat because they're links. So for anyone who wants to see those. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I can't help myself. I will also commend another piece by Martha, which is she wrote a piece called the Shadow Curriculum, which talked more about that difference between student affairs and the faculty. Shout out to all of our HxA members who work in student affairs. We love you all. We know sometimes it can be lonely there. So this is all meant to try to, work together to bring universities to support open inquiry. All right, before we break, I just want to thank everyone who joined us. To the person who asked who was in the chat because they couldn't see the number, we were at about 75 to 80 folks, a little smaller here in August, but a lively conversation that we enjoyed. Again, If you are not a member of HxA or you don't get our emails, please find us online. We are activating with Martha's leadership. We are adding campus communities and presence on specific campuses. But we'd love for you to get involved in our online HX communities, in our events that are coming up this year, and in grant programs and other kinds of exciting things that are happening. In the meantime, thank you for joining us today. And I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. And if you are orienting your students to the pursuit of truth, I hope it goes well for you this year. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you.